This is Steve, and I'm here with Councilman John Shoaff. We're at Headwaters Park. John, last week the Board of Commissioners, Parks Board of Commissioners, voted to only go with a one-year contract, kind of look at the management agreement that they have with Headwaters Park, and kind of see if things can be done differently, if it's the right agreement. I know you've got some pretty strong feelings about that, so why don't you share them with us?
Well, thanks, Steve. Yes, and I heard your two interviews with Al and with Jeff, so that gave me a good background on this. And we do know they're taking a closer look this time at the agreement than they have in the past. That's an agreement that's been going on for almost 10 years now, I think, and it's gone very well. I have some feelings, I suppose, because I have some history with this issue, and of course I grew up hearing about the significant partnership between the private sector and the public sector that really gave our parks to the city, built the amenities in our parks, and over the many decades it has served our citizens very well. I think our citizens really appreciate the fact that people who have done well in business have returned what they're getting from the community back to it by way of gifts of parks, like Mellon Park, Foster Park, and so on. Those are named after very generous people. That arrangement was really reinforced by the development of the Park Foundation. That's the Park Foundation that deals with provides for all of our parks. But the Headwaters Park Alliance is the first entity of its kind, which is a 501c3, that's a nonprofit group organized specifically for the purpose of managing a park, which the private sector by and large paid for. The private sector not only raised $9 million to build it, they put in $1 for every 10 into an endowment maintenance fund. That now exists. It's monitored by the Park Foundation, with the income coming to the Alliance for part of their operating costs. In addition to that money, which must run $40,000 a year now, the private sector, through generous donors and foundations, and Public One Corporation in particular, have been giving about $75,000 per year for our operating costs. And of course, on top of that, in the last 5 years or so, this group has raised about $5 million for capital projects, like the wonderful Lincoln Pavilion, the extension of the pavilion on the east side, now named after Madge Rothschild, who's the benefactor. So, and the management not only has brought in a lot of money, but it's, I think, very good management. Done an excellent job of running the many activities, the many festivals that we have down here. And of course, they're taking excellent care of the grounds. So I think anyone would have to say it's been very well managed, it's brought in a lot of money, it's been an arrangement, and it does, I would say, put the burden on anyone who want to change the arrangement to explain why they are going to improve things by severing this tie.
This was one of the first real public-private sector partnerships, if you will. In fact, there was special legislation that was created to allow this, not just for Headwaters, but allow other projects like this in the future.
There's state legislation. Of course, the state controls the way we do business up here, much more than it should. But there is legislation, so-called enabling legislation, that permits agreements between counties and cities or between governmental entities. It was such an agreement that was the basis for the Headwaters Park Commission, which was created specifically to build the park. We worked on with the city for 10 years in the park bill, and it was this commission that brought in the $9 million of private money, a couple of million from the state, the rest from the city, pulled the whole thing together. The city contribution was earmarked for the flood control mitigation component of this, and the many millions of private money were earmarked for the construction of what is obviously a beautiful and useful park. So, and then the Alliance itself came into existence afterwards, and it is the first entity of its type in this city. Not the first in this country by any means. In fact, it was modeled very specifically after the New York City Central Park Conservancy, which raises money for and manages Central Park. That's an ongoing entity, still very successful, and still very good for the citizens of New York. We think, I think we're on a parallel track of providing something to benefit for the Wainwright cities.
One of the things that comes to mind when we start talking about the possibility of maybe the city taking over the management And you do a lot, you're a city councilman, you see a lot of the inside of how city government works. Do you think that there really is a more efficient way for city government to take it over rather than leave it in the private hands?
Well, I'll start with what I gather the city's position would be, and that would be we have separate management here. This would be more efficiently done if they reduce this personnel here, which is basically one person, Jeff Paddock, and one assistant working part-time and another assistant working out in the field. You can cut that down just so much because there's a lot of management involved here. You've got an event or a festival virtually every weekend in decent weather from late May to mid-October. And you have the ice rink, which needs management. And you have the fundraising that goes on, of course. Plus you always have actually grounds out in front. So I think the city would be hard-pressed to make the case that they can make any significant savings here. Let's assume they can make a few. They still would have to demonstrate that they can make up for the $75,000 they're very likely to lose in that income stream to the private sector. Because over the decades, and this goes way back, I learned this virtually at my grandfather's knee, who was president of the park board for 30 years, the private sector has always liked to work with either a very independent park board, which they have for many years, or with private sector groups like the Park Foundation, which will oversee the way that the money is spent. Nothing against the city, but they have a great deal of confidence in those arrangements, and I think any time you sever one of those arrangements, you jeopardize the funds that are coming into the parks that way.
Okay, so John kind of talked a little bit about, you mentioned the ice rink that we have down here every season, and what's the value of the ice rink for the downtown for Fort Wayne?
Well, I think it has a great value for downtown. Obviously, it has a great value for the skaters, and we're pleased it's been so successful. The attendance has grown, the use of it has grown every year, but it brings people downtown in the wintertime, and it helps create that traffic, the combinations of people that come. The thing you need to build up a critical mass of activity to make the downtown lively once again. So I think it's a wonderful thing for us to have. I hope we keep it going. I think the value of something that like that goes beyond just the pecuniary value. Yes, we make a little money off of it, but more importantly, perhaps it's one of those things you do to revitalize the whole downtown.
Anything else we didn't cover you'd like to mention, John?
Well, I might continue in that vein and just say that when we built Headwaters Park, we felt we were quite certain we were adding value to the downtown area. And I think by having an attractive park like this and by having the greenways that are connected with it, you make it possible for somebody to live downtown. Maybe you could live downtown now without an automobile. Well, you could if you had a grocery store and that sort of thing. But if you can get your entertainment, your restaurants, and your outdoor recreation all virtually in one place, then you can regenerate, I think, downtown living, which I think we would like to hear. It's a coming trend around the country. We watch it happen in other cities that are competing with us. Some of us have watched it in bigger cities, which of course been going on all the time. But you learn from just in Chicago, New York, those places work because Chicago has the Lakeshore Park, New York has the Central Park, and we now have the Headwaters Park.
Well, John, it's been a pleasure. We appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.